So we're going to talk about what I really believe may be one of the biggest type of catastrophes that we could run into, and it's the black climate lockdown. So here's really how the core constellation, its variables, right? Black people are financially immobile. We have intergenerational lack of property ownership or inherited wealth, credit score redlining, modern algorithmic lending bias, car dependency in areas with no transit and auto loan predation, and we have rising rent displacement, but not relocating, forced local shuffle, no disaster insurance or policies voided after one claim. And the thing is that we have climate disaster predictability coming on the horizon, where we know the collapse is coming, but little was done to protect it. And these include flood-prone urban areas, heat islands in cities without tree cover, hurricane coasts with degraded infrastructure, western fire zones intersecting with marginalized rural zones, and here's the truth. Black people live in all of them. All of those areas and cannot move. So we're going to see white flight 2.0. So not race-based in name, but income and amenity based in function. So we'll get to see people flee water scarce, crime label, or resource drained areas. But the target flight destinations are often where black populations already live. So they're abandoning one group of black people to move into another set. And it's a preemptive political lockdown taking place right now. The trap is set before the collapse. So here's how they're trapping us in these spots. So we have state preemption laws, protest criminalization, education board takeovers, voter roll purges, and infrastructure austerity measures, right? Austerity zones, right? And austerity is whenever the government, they're saying, oh, we're doing bad, we need to cut something, right? They have already labeled these places right now in preparation for White Flight 2.0. And this is actually where we get to see some of these areas get deeply ravaged, right? The Gulf Coast Triangle, right? Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. The climate threats are the hurricanes, rising sea levels, freshwater salinization, and extreme heat. And the truth is that black people, they have extreme roots, historical land ownership, no funds to evacuate or rebuild. And here's the lockdown moves. We see massive underfunding in levees and flood walls, property buybacks in exchange for climate silence, right? Non-disclosure clauses. And voter suppression is strongest here. Charter schools as mind control institutions for disaster prep neutrality. The future is where white climate migrants will seize higher ground while black populations are flooded and blamed for failing to adapt. But then we're also going to see a southern belt chokehold where Georgia, South Carolina, North Florida, where they're in the migration from the coast, overwhelmed infrastructure and heat domes. That's really the threat, right? That's how we're going to look at it. The black populations that get affected by this are politically majority in cities, but minority in state legislatures. So we're going to see some lockdown moves already moving. I'm about to show you what's already moving. Criminalization of voter mobilization and food at polling sites, right? Infrastructure bills diverted to wealthy white suburbs. School choice sold as freedom uses ideological reprogramming. We're going to see a future where black communities in Atlanta, Savannah, and Jacksonville will be surrounded by neo-gated climate communities with private police, right? And it's illegal to even get supplies in an environment already ravaged. I hope you're seeing the connection between disaster and the flight, but we're going to keep going. The inland islands. So we're going to talk about Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland. None immediately severe with the climate threats, right? Making them future havens for post-disasters elsewhere. And black populations are already present in critical mass, but politically eroded. So we see mass surveillance justified by public safety, right? Infrastructure decay framed as failure of black leadership. And we see charter school expansion used to disarm new thinkers. These cities have become internally locked fortresses, black on the ground, white in the clouds, literal skyrise dominion. And then we see the West Coast no man's land, right? That's inland California, Oregon, and Arizona border towns. We'll see fires, droughts, water rights collapse, heat death, and the black populations are small but concentrated in poor urban zones and working gig economies. We're going to see some lockdown moves already shuffling in, right? Evictions justified as fire risk control, digital blacklist for housing and aid, migrant worker suppression laws repurposed to surveil black labor, and we'll see new black migrant populations form in an invisible underclass unable to vote, organize, or own. And this is where we see some of the gentrification zones come in. DC, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Oakland. The climate threats are the coastal flooding, the extreme rent inflation, and infrastructure stress. The long-time residents will be rapidly pushed out, and we already see tech-backed land grabs under smart city branding. ESG, environmental social governance tools used to remove low-score renters. And we see political co-option, black mayors used to greenwash white displacement. And the thing is that we see a future of aesthetic diversity, no actual black autonomy. And this is actually where the final section gets hit. We see the black belt Shadowlands get hit badly. The only reason I'm calling them that is because of how they're going to demonize this area. So Arkansas, East Texas, Northern Louisiana, we're going to see heat collapse, stagnant water diseases, and food deserts, the highest density of rural black landowners in America, but unprotected. So strip mining, pipelines rerouted there, infrastructure withheld unless annexed or sold, and FEMA ignores. And it turns them into sacrifice zones with black populations allowed to wither unless absorbed into the service labor pools. And really, black people will own land but not the right to move. Containment. They'll be anchored by legal suppression, contained by climate crisis, disempowered by tech, and framed as burdens to justify total control. But there is a counterplan to this, and I'm going to talk about how to. So we really need to build what they can't see, regulate, or stop. So every neighborhood becomes a climate pod. Really, food sovereignty, community gardens, aquaponics, water storage, purification, solar panels, battery backups, off-grid independence, mesh internet, off ISP communication grids, skill sharing, emergency medicine, coding, agriculture. Think black monasteries, but for collapse, spiritual, practical, and encrypted. And we need land trust collectives, not owned, just guarded, right? Covertly buy land under intergenerational trust, tribal alliances, black churches, is whatever we got to do. Legally restructure ownership to prevent asset seizures and prioritize inland, elevated, near water. Right? The goal is not to build equity for capitalism. It's to build territory for sovereignty. And then we need black data sanctuaries. AI will erase the story unless we encrypt it. It's just the truth. So we need to fund and build black controlled cloud servers, map archives, and digital libraries in advance. Scrap and mirror historical data, voter maps, land ownership files. We need to save it all because they're going to snatch it all. If they control the servers, they erase the memory. If we control them, we control the future's truth. And then we have the political invasion and guerrilla strategy. Organized not around national elections, but county and district control, flip school boards, zoning commissions, water boards before the collapse hits. Fund independent black candidates for those overlooked positions. We got to win the trenches, not the tower. That really is how serious this type of thing is. But also policy encryption. The thing is that we do bad arguments. We need to use coded policy language that advances liberation without triggering opposition. So defund the police, no. They used to hearing that. Disaster Response Alignment Act. Reparations, environmental damage compensation zones. Language is a weapon, right? Just outright. But speak freedom in tongues the empire can't decode. And here's the thing, we need ally infiltration. We need to train a generation of lawyers, coders, engineers, and data scientists to work inside the system, but report to the people. They'll reroute funding, leak blueprints, expose data before the fallout. If the system uses sleeper agents, so should the resistance, right? Realistically. And then the thing is that we also need memory embassies. Black churches, barbershop schools become embassies of culture and resilience. Teach financial evasion, land laws, mutual aid history, climate science, literally almost weekly. Record oral histories and myths to pass on into post-collapse generations. If we go quiet, we vanish. If we go mythic, we become immortal. And that's really the thing. Okay, but we also need disaster-driven faith models. This type of hit is going to spiritually affect black culture in a way that is deep. Right, we need to revamp spirituality to prepare people for climate and psychological trauma. Reframe suffering as resistance, because you don't need to suffer to resist. Right, like that's why suffering is meaningless. It's a waste. Right, like just because something was difficult didn't mean you had to suffer. It was just difficult. Your suffering was not required. Right, and the thing is that all of this our culture already has baked in. We're already loading it. Right? If white systems prepare their kids for Wall Street, we need to prepare ours for the fire and the flood. So then, right, the post-collapse strategy. If the empire collapses, the ones who already knew how to run the water systems, defend infrastructure, and farm land, black sanctuaries will be the only functioning cities in some of these regions, just being straight up. Okay, we've handled collapses like this several times. They haven't. The sky is going to fall in on them. That's how it's going to feel, right? And thus, we will hold bargaining power. We survived the heat. Now you want our shade? Let's negotiate. That's what I keep thinking about when I say guidance. I made a video about the multi-ethnic collapse, but this is the guidance. Because black people already know what to advocate for, right? And the thing is that the grandchildren of the movement should not just inherit trauma, they should inherit land, encrypted histories, blueprints for cities, languages that remember, and networks that feed and protect. You don't just prepare for freedom, you pass it down like oxygen. Really, here's the thing. We need to stop moving like a movement and start moving like a mycelium, underground, networked, regenerative, too vast to destroy. Right? Really, that's how deep it has to be. Right? And that's why you have meaning regardless of if you earned or suffer for it. It exists.